Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the September 20th meeting of the Comox Valley Sewage Commission. And welcome to those commissioners and staff who are here in the Regional District Boardroom, along with anyone who's online with us, including members of the general public who might have tuned in today. I'd just like to acknowledge Director Hamir is here as a welcome guest, as the Area B representative and non-voting guest. Before we start, I'd like to acknowledge that we're meeting on the unceded territory of the Comox First Nation, the traditional keepers of this land. And I'd like to turn things over to our CAO, Mr. Dyson, for another welcoming.
Thank you very much, Chair and Commissioners. And you may have heard that Mike Emery, our Manager of Operations for the plant, has retired. We have a replacement now, just like Chris LaRose, to introduce to you, Reid.
Thank you, Russell, and through the Chair, good afternoon, everyone. As Russell mentioned, Mike Emery, our longstanding Manager of Wastewater Services, retired this summer. So we embarked on a competition to fill that very crucial role for the CVRD. And Reid Sellington was the successful candidate. So Reid has actually been with the CVRD for approximately 12 years. The last 2 years has filled the role of a senior operator treatment for the wastewater services. So yeah, definitely like you to join me in welcoming Reid to this critical role for the region. Very strong confidence in him and the technical and leadership skills that he brings to the table. Welcome, Reid.
Appreciate that, Chris. Thank you very much, everyone, for having me.
Thanks very much, Chris. And Reid, on behalf of the Commission, welcome. Best of success in this role, and we'll appreciate your help in the years to come. Well, hopefully, if we're back at the table. I'd also like to, on behalf of the Commission, thank Mike Emery for his years of service and wish him all the very best in retirement. With that, we shall move on with our agenda. The first item is our management report from September 20th. A motion for receipt, please.
Second.
Moved Grant, seconded Cole Hamilton. Any questions, comment, discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried, and we shall move on to the Sewage Management Advisory Committee minutes from September 6th for receipt. Moved by Grant, seconded by Cole Hamilton. Any questions or comment? All right, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. And the first of our massive reports today, Stage 1 and 2 Liquid Waste Management Plan, report dated September 13th for receipt. Moved by Grant, seconded by Morin, and over to staff.
Thank you very much, Chair and Commissioners. And Zoe Berkey, our project engineer, is here to explain these reports and to respond to any questions that you may have.
Oh, yes.
Thanks, Russell, and through the CAO and the chair to the Commission. Provided as an attachment to the staff report is the draft Stage 1 and 2 Liquid Waste Management Plan. The report summarizes all the work that has been completed to date and the process that has been undertaken to reach the preferred solutions for conveyance, the level of treatment at the wastewater treatment plant, and resource recovery. The report is long and summarizes and kind of follows the lengthy process it took us to get here. The report is currently being reviewed by Comox First Nation and TACPAC members, and CVRD, we're looking for approval in principle by the Sewage Commission today, pending no substantial changes from either Comox First Nation or the TACPAC. In parallel, we are working with the Comox First Nation on updates to the CBA to allow for earlier payment to Comox and eliminate perceived liabilities for the CVRD. Further detail on the CBA amendments will be provided as part of a subsequent report on the agenda today. Following approval from Comox and receipt of their letter of support and incorporation of any minor comments that come out of the reviews, the report will be submitted to the ministry for their review and approval. I'm happy to answer any questions on this report.
I believe Director Grant had a question about an item on page 847.
Doug could give us a wrap up on the last 10 pages of this.
Well, as I mentioned to Mark Retton before the meeting, I have implicit trust in our staff to summarize this report and highlight any areas that they believe we need to delve into further. As has been noted, this is material that we've all been over before. And but I wonder if staff could perhaps just let us know what the next steps are and where, in fact, this report goes and what sort of process we can look forward to after today.
Absolutely. So after today, once we receive kind of final comments from the TAC PAC and the Comox First Nation, we'll be submitting it to the ministry. And the ministry can take up to a year for their review. So they'll be reviewing that report and asking questions if there are any, and then following that process, we'll proceed on to a stage 3 LWMP report. That report kind of takes the next step in what upgrades are at the plant and gives that approval for borrowing for the upgrades. That's kind of the next step after this piece.
Okay, and I did notice in the advisory reports that there were questions about the role of the TAC PAC and the fact that they hadn't actually met for quite some time, and whether or not it was necessary to perhaps pull them together in some type of Zoom or other facilitated meeting rather than just an email request for review. I wonder if you could comment on that, please.
Sure. Chris, I don't know if you want to comment on that or you'd like me to.
Yeah, sure. No, thanks, Zoe. Yeah, so we did have that conversation at advisory, and we concluded that given we have done periodic email updates to the Technical and Public Advisory Committee since the last meeting towards the end of 2020, and that there have been no any significant changes to the outcomes from those long series of TAC PAC meetings. I believe we had 11 meetings, all of which are summarized in the behemoth of an attachment to your agenda today. So our conclusion was that for this final step, that an email review was appropriate, rather than adding to yet another meeting to that long series.
Can you confirm if there's been much in the way of significant change to the composition of the Technical and Public Advisory Committees over this period of time? Since
so, yeah, as you can imagine, I think it's been fully 4 years, just over 4 years since the beginning of that process, since those committees were convened in June of 2018. So there has been some turnover over the years, just in terms of specific individuals representing the organizations that are represented on the committee. But other than several substitutions of individuals, there hasn't been any significant changes to the body.
Thanks for that. Comments from Director Grant.
Yeah, thanks. I just note that at tomorrow's council meeting in Comox, this will be on the agenda, and the recommendation from staff is to approve. So we've got quite a list of the projects and all that things. I think the only real issue we have is traffic flow, but I mean, that's just going to be what it is. So, hopefully they'll come up with a good plan, and as long as it's fluid and we can deal with it, I'm not anticipating any issues.
And we'll actually get to delve into the traffic report later on the agenda today. So is there any further comment or question from commission members? Seeing none, we'll call the question. All in favor of receipt? Any opposed? That's carried. And we have a recommendation that the stage 1 and 2 liquid waste management plan be approved in the form that is substantially compliant with Appendix A of the staff report dated September 13th, 2022.
Second.
Moved Grant, seconded Swift. Any discussion? I will just note that in effect, we're approving this in principle, subject to further input from the TAC PAC and Comox First Nation, as explained by staff. So seeing no discussion, all those in favor? Are there any opposed? That is carried. Thank you. That's a record time for getting through a 1,200-page report, I'm sure. Okay, item number 3 on our agenda, treatment technologies options analysis is part of the Comox Valley Water Pollution Control Center site master planning work and value management workshop. Try and explain that succinctly to the folks back home. This is a report for receipt, so I'll take a receipt motion, please. Moved by Grant, second by Swift, and over to staff.
Thank you very much, Chair and Commissioners. And Zoe Berkey will explain this report and answer any of your questions so that you may all understand it as thoroughly as she does.
Thanks, Russell. As part of the liquid waste management planning process, there was a review of levels of treatment and resource recovery at the Comox Valley Water Pollution Control Center, and a preferred level of treatment was selected. That preferred level of treatment was secondary treatment of all wastewater flows with the inclusion of UV disinfection, along with consideration being made to incorporate the use of reclaimed water at the plant and including provision for advanced treatment options in the future. As part of the LWMP process, it was recommended that a site master plan be developed for the facility to build on the high-level work that was completed through the LWMP and to help inform the Stage 3 liquid waste management plan and guide future upgrades. The CVRD has since initiated this work with the intent to develop a detailed capital upgrade plan, including phasing and associated costs of upgrades at the plant over the next 50 years, with a focus on maximizing use of existing infrastructure wherever possible. AECOM has been awarded the contract for this work and has completed the first phase of their study, which was review and evaluation of secondary treatment options. This is the report that is attached to as Appendix A to the staff report. The wastewater treatment plant is a conventional activated sludge facility. However, there are a number of treatment technologies that would also achieve secondary treatment and meet the objectives of the LWMP. After careful consideration and review a number of operational, site layout, regulatory requirements, and cost considerations, the recommended approach is to proceed with conventional activated sludge treatment technology for all upgrades. The next phase of AECOM's work is to develop a phasing plan for conventional activated sludge upgrades at the plant, along with a solids management strategy. The phasing plan will consider remaining service life of assets and utilizing existing assets where possible, optimizing plant performance and capacity, operational considerations, and life cycle costs. Due to the complexity and number of possible options for upgrading the plant and cost impacts to the service over the next 50 years, we are recommending a value management exercise be completed during the second phase of work to review the developed upgrade option. The staff report recommends proceeding with conventional activated sludge treatment technology and completing a budget amendment to proceed with the value management work this year. The site master plan is a key document for completion of the Stage 3 LWMP and will help guide upgrades at the facility over the next 50 years. We're happy to answer any questions you may have on this report.
And we have a question from Director Hamir.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Zoe. A question about the upgrades to the treatment system. Can you speak to if you think there might be an impact on odors at the sewage treatment plant, and if in the upgrades there might be a bit of exposure if you're having to change any equipment around or open up the bioreactors?
Yeah, so proceeding with conventional activated sludge has a couple benefits, and that will be kind of mirroring the plant that we already have. So as part of any future upgrades, we'll continue to cover the tankage as we are doing on this side. There will be a period where we are constructing a new headworks and then phasing that in. So there could be some periods there where we're switching around infrastructure, but essentially just as we start reaching capacity in the tankage we have, we'll be adding new tankage, and that new tankage will be covered and then connected to the system as it goes along.
Thanks for that. For people who might be tuning in and unfamiliar, can you explain what exactly happens to the sludge? I think we all know that the wastewater is treated and then discharged well out to sea. But maybe you could share with us how the sludge is actually handled.
Absolutely. So a big part of the site master planning that I maybe didn't touch on is the solids management strategy. So separate from what happens to the liquid stream of waste, we also separate out the solids, and those solids are dewatered and then they're trucked to our compost facility where they're made into compost. So that piece of the work is also a big part of kind of this next phase of upgrades, is how we handle increased production of biosolids as our flows increase, and then where they go and how that composting process proceeds.
Thanks very much. Any further questions or comments? I have to share with you that, as some of you know, my household got a new puppy this summer, and that very active puppy's name is actually Smudge. And so we had a little bit of confusion at the house over the weekend when I was referencing this report, and my wife thought I was referring to activated smudge treatment, which we're badly in need of right now. Anyway, that's my vain attempt to add some levity to a rather unseemly topic. But thanks very much, Zoe and staff, for your presentation of the report. And if there's no further comment or question on receipt, all those in favor? And none opposed, and thank you, that's carried. Director Amir, I'll just remind you that you can't vote. Yeah, I just have to be clear that even if you put your hand up, we're not going to count it. And we do have a recommendation, number 1. And I'm going to read it because we allocated an hour and a half for this meeting, and we're not going to need it. So the recommendation is that based on the results of the treatment technologies review completed by AECOM and as presented within the report titled Evaluation of Process Options for the Future Secondary Treatment Expansions attached as Appendix A to the staff report dated September 13th, 2022, Comox Valley Water Pollution Control Center continued to utilize conventional activated sludge treatment technology to achieve secondary treatment of all wastewater flows. Moved by Grant, seconded by Cole Hamilton. Any discussion?
Clear, we're not talking about your dog.
Not talking about my dog. All those in favor? And none opposed? That is carried. And we have a second recommendation. Moved by Grant, seconded by Cole Hamilton, that the 2022 to 2026 financial plan and capital expenditure program for the Comox Valley Sewage Service Function 335-338 be amended in the 2022 budget year by increasing other professional fees expenses by $150,000 to be funded by a corresponding transfer from the future expenditure reserve for the service for the completion of a value management process as part of the Comox Valley Water Pollution Control Center site master planning work. Any comments, questions? And Zoe, you did speak to this, but once again, to clarify, a value management process is where we essentially contract with some expertise to assure that what we think is the right way to proceed is in fact supported by that expert advice. Thank you. Any no comments or questions? All those in favor? Any opposed? And that is carried. And we move on to item number 4. And a sign of the times, Comox Valley Water Pollution Control Center wastewater testing, a report dated September 13th for receipt. Moved by Grant, seconded by Swift, and over to staff.
Thank you very much. And for this report, Chris LaRose will introduce it.
Thank you, Russell, and through the chair. So after a couple pretty huge reports, this is a very brief one, just to provide an update to the Commission about a partnership or collaboration that we're just kicking off right now between the CVRD and the BC CDC. For testing of wastewater at the Comox Valley Water Pollution Control Center. So early in the pandemic, we heard of a program that was being initiated or successfully elsewhere in North America as well as in BC to test or sample and test wastewater to for the proxies of COVID-19 to help public health officers gauge the level of disease within a specific community and thereby tailor specific health strategies. So we contacted our local health authority, let them know that we were eager to participate and if and when such a program was available here. And eventually, finally, earlier this year, they did reach out and let us know that that pilot study was being expanded to other communities within BC. So this last week, Reed and his team started taking the first samples, and so those samples are being couriered from the plant to the BC CDC, where it's tested for COVID-19 as well as a range of other pathogens such as the seasonal flu, potentially even for other contaminants associated with illicit drug use, that type of thing. And that will happen 3 times per week indefinitely. So we're very happy to be collaborating with the BC CDC on this public health measure, and we'll be reporting back to the Commission once some results are in hand. They've committed to sharing the results with us as they come up. And I also just wanted to note that the full cost of this program in terms of the couriering and the lab testing, et cetera, are being covered by the BC CDC. And the only costs incurred on the part of the Commission or the service are the staff time in terms of taking the samples and adding the labels and coordinating with the courier service. So that's it for me, but happy to support any discussion on the topic.
Thank you, Chris. Questions or comments from Commission members? Director Morin.
Great, thank you, Chair. I'm wondering if we have an idea of what other communities have participated, and also if there's a website to kind of follow the work, and I guess looking at what specifically the data is going to be used for. There's a way to kind of track it on our own if we're nerdy like that. Thanks.
Yeah, so I'm not aware of that opportunity, but we'll certainly check in with the program staff to understand whether there is such a public portal, or if you'll be reliant on receiving those updates through staff. So I commit to getting back to you on that one.
And do we know what other communities have participated over the last couple of years?
So my understanding is that there were portions of Metro Vancouver that were involved in the initial pilot. So I'm not sure if that was the entire community or just because there are several wastewater treatment plants within Metro Vancouver, and that they've just moved to expand that to other communities within BC this year, kind of in parallel with our experience. But I couldn't tell you which other communities are part of that program. But again, we'll find that out and get that information back to the Commission.
Right. So it's possible we may be the first one on the island. Thanks.
Thanks, Director Morin. And Chris, we've been hearing about this from other parts of the country for some time through the pandemic. Is the timing of this application here simply a function of capacity at the Center of Disease Control, or are there other factors?
I'm not too sure to what extent the capacity there has been a factor. I think my sense, just from our perspective, is that it's taken some time for the kind of the proof of concept for the value and accuracy of this particular tool to be demonstrated, and again that it's taken time to build the staff required to administer a program of this type. So that's taken some time. So I think in the scheme of things, to have had this happen over 2 years is probably fairly quickly. That's my sense.
Okay, thanks. And seeing no further questions, we'll vote on receipt. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. And we'll move on. Thanks, Chris. We'll move on to the Comox Valley Sewer Conveyance Project Traffic Management Strategy Update. Motion for receipt of the report of September 15th. Moved by Grant, second by Swift, and over to staff.
Thank you very much. And Chris LaRose will take this report as well.
Thank you, Russell, and through the chair. So yeah, this staff report provides an update on the progress towards development of a traffic management strategy for the conveyance project. So as is clear, the project is a large one. It bisects the community. It runs along a significant arterial route between Courtenay and Comox, as well as bisecting the downtown Comox. So there will be traffic impacts, and our intention in developing this strategy is to work with key stakeholders to develop mechanisms and constraints on the contractors delivering the project to try and mitigate as much of those impacts to residents and businesses as possible. And so to this end, we've engaged a consultant, Urban Systems, who were the lead consultants assisting the city of Courtenay during their 5th Street Bridge repainting project. And so we were able to partner with Urban Systems and ensure that we can build on the significant modeling work that was done for the whole community as part of that project. So that's excellent. So they were engaged earlier this summer. And since then, they've worked to kind of progress that original traffic model and tailor it to our project. In parallel with that, we've been working on engagement with key stakeholders. So that over the first part of the summer, we met one-on-one with 10 different entities representing individuals or businesses or governmental organizations that make use of the key roadways that will be impacted by the project, in an effort to better understand how that infrastructure, the road infrastructure, is currently used to help inform potential strategies to mitigate the impact. In addition to those 10 meetings, we also developed a survey that was circulated to other stakeholders and members of key stakeholder groups like the Chamber of Commerce and the businesses improvement associations that we met with directly. Their members were also provided the survey. So we were able to get a fair bit of information, which is summarized in the attachment to your report. And so that's also been provided to Urban Systems to help inform development of the strategy. So in terms of key feedback that we heard through that targeted stakeholder engagement, no surprise, the route is relied upon by many in the community. There's quite a high level of concern about the potential for disruption to downtown businesses, kind of the business activity within downtown Comox. There's kind of concerns about the existing congestion and traffic and lack of parking in downtown Comox, and fears that this project could exacerbate that. Certainly, we heard from everybody just how critical clear communication is with the community before and during construction. So providing as many different opportunities for information as possible. So through all available media, to ensure that when people are making decisions about where to go and how to get there, that they know where to get that information to avoid to minimize their impact. We also we kind of started to narrow down some key constraints that should be embedded with the traffic management strategy. So certainly some to help mitigate the impact on the town of Comox. So no construction work that would limit access to Marina Park during the busiest time of year. So from the beginning of May to October 1st. So certainly that was an important one, as well as that the hard constraint of no interruption at all, or no disruption at all during the Nautical Days Festival, which takes place on BC Day long weekend every summer, and also of course emergency vehicle access retained at all times. We've also engaged with the Comox First Nation throughout the process. Through Chief and Council, through our monthly meetings with Chief and Council so far, although we do have plans to meet directly with the KFN community in October. to help understand more directly some of their concerns. As far as what we've heard from the KFN through the process to date, certainly concerned about traffic and through IR1 and access by band members to the key infrastructure there. Quite a bit of concern about the potential for work along Comox Road to lead to increased traffic on Back Road. So they're quite keen to work with us and Urban Systems to try and avoid that situation. And then similar to what we've heard consistently elsewhere from the community, that the need to for clear and consistent communication. So the traffic management strategy is in the final stages of development, and the purpose of that document is to summarize, all of the key feedback received to date, and then provide some key constraints on that will then be passed on to the contractors for both of the two contract components, to constrain their development of the traffic management plans. So the traffic management strategy, which will be complete over the next 2 or 3 weeks, will not tell us exactly when and how long the disruptions will occur. It's much more geared at implementing constraints, which the contractors will then take and use to constrain their traffic management plans, which will be developed and circulated for communications in early 2023. So it's not until those plans are in hand will we know exactly when construction is going to occur and at which part of the project. So just in summary, the next steps, I just wanted to highlight this completion of this strategy over the next couple of weeks. What we plan to circulate that document to the stakeholders that we've engaged with and the KFN, receive and potentially incorporate any relevant feedback, and then submit convey the strategy to the contractors. In October, the direct engagement with the KFN community will occur. In late October, there'll be an advertising campaign for a series of open houses and webinars and other engagement opportunities that will occur in November with the general public. And then once the traffic management plans are, so the results of that will be fed back to the contractors. And once the traffic management plans are received from the contractors, there'll be another opportunity for public engagement in late winter, early spring of 2023, in advance of construction, so that the community knows exactly what to expect and when. So that's all I have on this topic today, but I'm happy to support the discussion.
Thanks, Chris. And our first question or comment is from Director Grant.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. That looks like a pretty detailed plan. Something that struck me is I don't see Ryan Road on here, and I think if you have traffic issues on the dike and you're going to try and keep people off the back road, is that going to create issues coming down Ryan Road and getting people into town? And is that an area we should be concerned about? Number one. Number two, you mentioned parking in downtown Comox. We actually have quite a bit of parking, but a lot of it is behind buildings, under buildings, and most people don't know. So perhaps some signage to point out where some of that parking actually is might help mitigate that.
Great. Yeah, thank you. Thanks. As far as that second point goes, I've definitely noted that, and we'll work with town staff and our communication staff to make sure that's well communicated, and potentially that increased awareness could help to mitigate some of that impact to parking. With respect to the first comment about Ryan Road, so absolutely. So we actually met with Urban Systems this morning, just for along with town staff to review the progress to date, so certainly modeling of of the kind of the extent of the duration of the delays along the primary route is kind of the primary objective, but also how many minutes delay drivers could expect on the likely detour routes. So for alternative to going between Courtenay and Comox on Comox Road, certainly the two alternates are Back Road and then Lerwick and Ryan. So they're modeling the impact of potentially increased diversion of traffic to those routes, and also looking at developing the kind of the data or the recommendations necessary to then work with municipal and ministry staff on adjusting the timing of traffic signals to help optimize the flow, the expected flow of traffic from those diversions. So one of the ones that was specifically discussed was Back Road and Ryan at the bottom of the hill as being a signal which would likely warrant some adjustment to avoid a significant backup of traffic right back to Lerwick on Ryan Road, which could occur if those signal timings aren't optimized. So all that to say, we're definitely modeling the impact on the alternate detour routes and looking at ways to mitigate the impacts.
Thanks, Chris. Director Swift.
Thank you. Thanks, Chris. I'm just wondering, in my door knocking, I guess there's been quite a bit of apprehension from some of the merchants regarding coming out of COVID and now coming into the sewer project and having their people not able to get to their shops. And the concern was around Christmas, but from what you've said, it doesn't sound like this Christmas would be affected nor next Christmas. Is that correct? Am I understanding that correctly?
You're absolutely right that this Christmas would not be affected. The following Christmas would be right in the middle of the construction window, which is 18 months starting around next April. So in terms of approaches to help mitigate the impact on the Christmas season, we've been meeting regularly with the Comox BIA, and that specific one hasn't come up, but I think what has come up very consistently with the Comox BIA is the need for a collaborative approach to communication. So we are in the process of engaging a dedicated communications specialist whose sole role before and during construction will be this project. And so based on what we've heard clearly from the BIA, it'll be very important to be working closely together to have synchronized and effective messaging coming out from the CBRD and the Comox BIA about how to avoid impacting that Christmas season in 2023-24. So I think that's my response there.
Okay, thank you very much.
Relieved to hear there's no plans to cancel Christmas. And over to Director Hamir.
Thanks, Chair. Chris, I'm not sure if plans have changed, but is there still going to be a fair amount of staging happening on the Moreland side of Area B in that area? Is that still happening?
So I'm not sure exactly what you mean by staging, but there will definitely be a significant construction activity on that side. So exactly when within that 18-month construction window, we're not sure, and we won't know until we receive the schedules from the contractors and to some extent the traffic management plans. So that'll be in early 23 before we know exactly when those impacts will be occurring. But there will be a cut and cover operation along the very lower end of Moreland. And then there'll be a window of disruption along the unopened Brent Road right of way and the very end of Curtis Road when the horizontal directional drilling occurs. So that would be the kind of the extent of the disruption occurring in Area B.
Okay. Do you expect any kind of traffic impact for local residents in that area?
So there are several properties on that lower stretch of Moreland that I mentioned, where we'll be working closely with those property owners to make provision for continued access during that couple-week window where we're assembling the horizontal directional drill pipe on the surface and before it's drawn into the hill. So I think there's actually just 2 driveways. So we've got options there in terms of elevating the pipe so that it can be driven under or actually putting a ramp over top of it. So there's options there, and we'll be working very closely with those property owners to develop those.
Okay, great. That sounds fantastic. It look like, I can't imagine what that's going to look like on the road, but I'm glad you're considering some options. And then for residents oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, one more piece I forgot to mention, and just while we're on the topic of of impacts to Area B, we are planning to install a fiber conduit along the entire conveyance pipe alignment, and because that's not possible actually in the horizontal directional drilled tunneled section, there will be a conduit installed along Lazo from the entry pit at Torrance and Lazo all the way to Moreland, and then down to where the pipe comes out of the ground, and then it'll follow that alignment. Again, it's a pretty minimal disruption compared to the massive scale of the conveyance project itself, but there will be kind of localized impacts along that route for the several weeks while that's installed.
Okay. For residents on Curtis Road, will they still be able to come up to and leave up Moreland, or is there an alternate route that can be given to them?
So the conveyance, like the installation of the pipe itself, will not impact traffic down to Curtis Road, like at the intersection of Balmoral and Lazo there. And the fiber installation is very small scale. And these days they make very good use of a much smaller scale HDD installation. You've probably seen them around the community over this summer. There's been a number of fiber projects that are underway, as well as on Denman Island. So they typically will horizontal directional drill under roadways and driveways. So I wouldn't expect any significant traffic disruption as a result of that conduit being installed.
Thank you.
Thanks. And we now have Director Morin.
Great, thank you, Chair. I've been hearing anecdotally about kind of more road rage directed at workers and flaggers in particular. And I do know that the RCMP and their feedback just, brought up to make sure those incidences are reported. But I'm just wondering if there's anything built into the communication plan to flag that in terms of just reminding people about interactions with flaggers. And I guess the other piece of that is whether the contractors have some kind of track. I know this is more up to the contractors, but we do have that overall communication plan in terms of tracking those kinds of incidents, because again, they are often anecdotal and we don't know for sure. But I know on the 17th project, we were hearing that generally folks working on the project were treated fairly well, but I also hear, in general, those incidences are up, much like kind of the anger is up in many areas since COVID. So I'm just curious if we have that built into our communication plan, those kinds of issues.
Yeah, no, it's an excellent point. To my awareness, we haven't kind of built that into our plan to date, but now that you've raised it, we'll certainly give that some careful thought about how to weave that message into our communications. I think it's an excellent point. I think just given the scale and duration of some of these impacts, I think frustration on the part of some residents is inevitable. So as much as we can remind them not to take it out on the frontline workers, the better. So thank you for raising that.
Thank you.
Perhaps our flaggers could have cameras mounted at their stations so that if anybody disses a flagger, they get broadcast on the evening news as a reminder to be more civil. Anyway, I actually do have a more serious question. I note the Comox First Nation request that back road not be used as a detour. We really don't have any way of preventing that from happening since it's a public road. But what sort of strategies are available to perhaps discourage the use? You did mention advising people what the timing is likely to be. Is there anything else that we can actively do to support the KFN request?
Yeah, so I don't have a solid answer for you as of yet, Chair. But I will say that we're hoping that that's one of the key outcomes we're looking for from the strategy is recommendations on how to direct the majority of traffic away and diverted traffic away from that route. So I wouldn't want to comment on specific tools before I've seen those results from urban systems, but just to let you know that that's definitely a priority.
Thanks, and I'll perhaps echo Director Morin's comment because as we know, traffic safety and traffic movement is a huge issue for many of our citizens, and we've actually had comments in recent days about the general driving skills of many people, people who get their mirrors knocked off by other folk who don't actually stop, and that type of behavior. It strikes me that projects like this are an opportunity to do some public education around the responsibility of drivers to be both safe and civil. But fair enough. That's just an added comment for the mill. Any other comments or questions in relation to the traffic management strategy update? Seeing none, we'll vote on receipt. All those in favor? Are there any opposed? And that is carried. Thanks very much, Chris. And next we have the Comox Valley Sewer Conveyance Project dashboard. And September 2022, marbles in my mouth at the moment. September 2022 report for receipt. Moved by Cole Hamilton, seconded by Swift, and over to staff.
Thank you very much, Chair. And it is Chris LaRose again.
Great. Thank you, Russell, and through the chair. So this dashboard, we're also referring to it as the pre-construction report. Our intention is to update this report on a monthly basis, or at least bring it forward to every meeting of the Sewage Commission as an opportunity to provide an update on where we're at generally the project, in case that's not provided incidentally as part of any other staff reports on the agenda. So it's as you can see, it's a two-sided update with a very brief background on the project itself, and then the bottom part of the first page is a list of key project milestones or tasks that between us and construction. And so upon the start of construction, there'll be a kind of a construction update along the lines of what was provided during delivery of the water treatment project. So this specific format will take us through to the beginning of construction, which is expected at this point to be approximately April of 2023. And so in the project element table, it just lists the key project milestones and where we're at in delivery of those with the expected target completion date. And just to note that green is meant to signify kind of complete. Yellow is where a risk or delay is identified. When this specific issue of the pre-construction report was finalized, the yellow was overused in the table. So in future reports, yellow will only be used where we have identified a risk or delay, not just for every cell that isn't green yet. So we're on track for all of these key tasks. So there really is no risks or delays identified at this moment in time between us and an award of those two construction contracts. And for the purpose of this pre-construction report, we're referring them to them as contract 1, contract 2. Contract 1 being the design build contract, and then contract 2 being the design bid build contract for everything within the town of Comox. Yeah. And on the back page, we've got a summary of highlights and then upcoming activities. So highlights this time around, as I've just provided an update there, the traffic mitigation strategy is underway. We've got the RFP has been issued to the 3 proponents that were shortlisted through the prior request for qualifications. So they received that document approximately a month ago. And there's approximately 3 more months to go. So we'll be working closely with each of those 3 proponent teams through a series of in confidence collaborative meetings to help ensure that when we get to the end of the RFP period, what the proposal that they hand to us is compliant and at a highest possible quality. And finally, the last summary highlight there, as highlighted by Director Grant, the town CVRD town project agreement for the conveyance project is being brought through the town of Comox council meeting tomorrow. So that should say September 20th because today's, or sorry, 21st because today's the 20th. And then in terms of upcoming activities, the first collaborative meeting, as I just referred to those. So the first one is this week. First 2 are Thursday, Friday, and then the 3rd is on Monday. And then there'll be a total of 4 of those collaborative meetings over the 4-month RFP period. Also highlighting the KFN community meeting planned for October 13th and that public engagement period with the broader community in November. It also provides an update on the permits. So I won't walk through those in detail here, but it's provided a status for each. And we're on track for achieving each of these permits. And these are the ones that that we had identified early in the process as being potentially long lead time and more appropriate for the CVRD to lead than for the proponents. So there are a number of smaller permits that are left to the proponent teams to develop. Yes, that's all I had to say on the pre-construction report or the dashboard, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks very much, Chris. This is really your show today, and you're carrying the lion's share of the presenting with a great opening act by Zoe. We do have a question or comment from Director Morin.
Thank you. I know this is a pre-construction report, but I'm curious, with the water treatment project, I think a real highlight was that employment benefits component of that project. And I was curious whether that will be part of this component, having those, or sorry, this project and having those targets. And is that something that we are, maybe this is a more general question to staff, is that ongoing, always part of our large infrastructure projects? Thanks.
Sure. So I can speak to the conveyance project specifically. So we have so the implementation of those community employment benefits was a requirement under the grant funding received for the water treatment project.
Right.
But that being said, you know, it was viewed as a significant success for that project, and rightly so. So we have included similar language within the conveyance project RFP. So once we transition to the construction, the monthly construction report, update report, you'll start to see us reporting out on those values.
Great. Thank you for the reminder that it was tied to the grant funding, but I'm glad to hear that we're going to include that going forward. Thanks.
And Chris, I wanted to ask on the dashboard that indicates in relation to the Agricultural Land Commission, Transportation, Utility, and Recreation Trail Use Permit. Is that just the all-encompassing title of the permit, or is there actually some suggestion that there'll be a recreation trail that will result from this?
That's an excellent question. So no, that is the title of the permit, and it is an encompassing. So it encompassed each of those that you listed there. So there's no no plan or intention to have a recreational pathway over top of the infrastructure.
All right, so no walking tours alongside the new pump station?
Only
Right.
from the side of the road. Yeah.
Fair enough. Seeing no further questions or comments, we will vote on receipt of the dashboard. All those in favor? And any opposed? None. That is carried. We've been unanimous on every vote today, and the Christopher Lowe's show, I assume, continues with the Comox First Nation Community Benefit Agreement Amendment, a report dated September 15th for receipt. Moved by Grant, seconded by Cole Hamilton, and over to staff.
Thank you very much. And you are correct. Chris will lead on this, but I'd just like to point out that Peter Johnson, our solicitor, is also here in support on Zoom.
Thanks and welcome, Peter.
Thank you, Russell, and through the chair. Yeah, and thanks for highlighting Peter's presence, Russell. We asked Peter to be available on the line in case any questions arise about the kind of the approach taken here. But I was just planning to provide a very brief synopsis of that approach. So in late December 2020, the Commission approved the community benefit agreement with the KFN. So that was to resolve past and future impacts from sewer infrastructure on IR1 in exchange for KFN support for the conveyance project. So that CBA called for the compensation to the KFN to be paid once the province had approved the stage 2 LWMP. And in the meantime, we've seen a significant delay to submittal of that plan, which would then have pushed the payment of compensation to the KFN well past the start of the conveyance project impacts on IR1. So that came up as a flag. Also, during municipal legal review of the CBA back in December 2020, there was a flag raised about the presence of the combination of a kind of a long-term agreement and the compensation payment, and concern that combination could lead to a requirement by the province for electoral assent. So to address both of those issues, Peter and his team came up with the concept of an amending agreement. So the piece of the original CBA that extended beyond completion of the conveyance project was kind of some obligations, commitments by the Commission to support the Sewer South Extension project, which is a very critical project for servicing of the KFN development lands, as well as existing communities in the south. So the approach taken by Peter was to suggest this amending agreement, which is in front of you for approval today, which would effectively separate out the CBA into two agreements. One governing the sewer conveyance project, which would have a 5-year lifespan, ending just beyond completion of construction on the project, and then the other. And that agreement includes the compensation payment to the KFN. And then the other agreement, everything related to the Sewer South Extension project, and that necessarily would have a longer time frame, just given the longer time frame of that project. So the intention is not to physically separate the CBA, but rather to do it with this amending agreement. So that's attached for your approval. Peter and I are happy to respond to any questions you have about it. Otherwise, if approved today, then we're working with the KFN for language for their letter of support for the conveyance project, which would be processed over the coming couple of weeks, which would result in payment of compensation to the KFN and submittal of the LWMP stage 2 in early to mid-October. That's all I have today.
Thanks, Chris. And just while we see if there are any questions from commission members, can you confirm this was not actually asked for by KFN? This is something that our staff, I believe, proactively recognized as a flaw in the agreement and moved forward with?
Yes, that's correct, Chair.
Yeah, I think that's very commendable on the part of Regional District and Sewage Commission staff, and indicative of the proactive approach to our engagement with the Comox First Nation. Thank you. And Director Swift.
Thanks, Chris. I'm just wondering if you can just talk a little bit more about the capital liabilities issue that we're resolving by this agreement. I'm not sure if I fully understand what we're doing there.
Sure. So there is there's a requirement under the Local Government Act that prior to, so for local governments embarking either on long-term borrowing beyond 5 years or a long-term agreement with some type of capital liability or component to it, that they would trigger the requirement for electoral assent. So either a referendum, AAP, or a petition, or an LWMP. But because of that kind of inadvertent kind of combining of issues in the original CBA, we did end up with an agreement that, while focused on the conveyance project with a timeline less than 5 years, it did also include some components, some commitments regarding the Sewer South Extension project. So as a result, the end result was a longer term agreement, which also had this payment due to the KFN for past and future impacts of sewer infrastructure on IR1. But they are effectively separate issues. The conveyance project is in no way connected to the delivery of the Sewer South Extension project. It was just convenient at the time to address them both within that document. So what this is not a way around the Local Government Act, but by no means. This is just separating what arguably should have been separated from the start. So for everything related to the conveyance project, it's within an agreement which is less than 5 years. It will take us through to just past completion of construction of the conveyance project, with that payment of that compensation to KFN occurring, pretty much immediately.
Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, we shall vote on receipts. All those in favor? And none opposed, that's carried. And the recommendation that the Comox Valley Regional District and Comox agreement to amend the community benefit agreement be approved in the form that is substantially compliant with Appendix A to the staff report dated September 15th, 2022. Moved by Grant, seconded by Morin. Any discussion? All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. And I believe that brings us to the end of our agenda. And I'd like to thank staff, Zoe and Chris, for your presentations today, and all staff for your engagement. Since this is the last meeting of the Sewage Commission for this term, you'll permit me a couple of comments. And I want to just acknowledge that this term started with it not being uncommon for the gallery to be filled with angry residents, particularly in relation to the Curtis Road issues. This commission and staff successfully dealt with that issue, and with the covering of the bioreactors, and I think a new and positive relationship with the Curtis Road residents, we can point to substantial progress on an issue that has plagued the community and this particular body for quite some time. The openness to include the Area B rep at the table, I think, has been a constructive part of that whole process. And it's something that I think we have carried on with our invitation to the Area A rep in relation to the South Sewer project, which we have started to look at, again, addressing a significant historical environmental challenge in this community. We are moving ahead with the new sewage conveyance project, as we've spent a significant amount of time on today. And that is going to address the looming environmental crisis along the Willamar Bluffs. And again, correct a historical challenge that our community has faced. Last and certainly not least, perhaps most significant, the commission and the staff and members have a new constructive engagement with the Comox First Nation cooperative relationship that is going to carry us into the future and to significant work together. It's an example of reconciliation in action and very practical action to benefit all in our community. So I want to commend the members of the commission at this table. I also want to acknowledge that Director Frisch was the chair for the first 2 years prior to myself taking on this role. I want to acknowledge the tremendous work that staff have done to move us forward on a host of major issues. And I think that staff and commission members can take pride in the accomplishments of this term. I congratulate and commend all of you. And I want to wish you all the very best. I know that everybody at the table here is running in the next election. Maybe we'll all be blessed to once again convene around the Sewage Commission table. But one way or the other, I want to wish you all the best and thank you for your collaboration as we have worked together here. Thank you. And with that, we shall take a motion for termination. Moved by Grant, seconded by Cole Hamilton. All in favor? That is carried unanimously. Thank you.